Okay, let's start our Mindful Pilates class on our feet. In honor of our feet today, whether you can make the workshop or not, we will just develop a little awareness here. Lift one foot and plug in your big toe ball mount, like you're pushing on a gas pedal, and draw back and plug in your inner heel. And then strap across from that inner heel to your pinky toe ball mount and plug that in. And then plug in your outer heel. So now you have the four corners of one foot plugged in. Lift your toes, lift your arches of that foot. And it's easy to see this inner arch lift, but I also want you to look for the pinky toe to outer heel to lift, and then relax your toes. Now plug in your next big toe ball mount. Draw back to your inner heel, plug that in. Strap across. Let the metatarsal arch become wide as you plug in your pinky toe ball mount and your outer heel. Lift your toes. Feel the arches lift and relax your toes. Now everybody roll into the inner inside of your foot, pronate. Collapse your inner arch. And notice how if you over accentuate that, you're going to have creases on the outside of your ankles and your knees are going to fall in towards midline. That's going to put an outward pressure on the femur bones at your hips. Now, come out of that and roll to the outside edge of your feet, the pinky toe edge. Lift up your big toe ball mount completely. Lift the inner heel off and roll onto that outer edges. This is called the stable side of your foot. Okay, it's supposed to be your standing foot. Notice if you really roll out, you're going to be stretching this lateral side of your knee now and overstretching it more towards kind of a bow-legged feeling. Now come back in and plug in your big toe ball mount and your inner heel. And press down into those four corners evenly. Think about lifting the three arches evenly. And you may feel, I really want you to close your eyes for a moment, settle your mind into your feet and notice, do I feel like I'm more or less engaged in some of these corners of my feet? Now this is just for standing. Notice if you're leaning forward more heavily onto the front ball mounts, or if you're leaning back more heavily into the back heel. We want to find that balance, right? Kind of in the front of the heel. If you look down at your feet, really try to find evenness in the planting of those corners. Now stand upright and lift your heart. Let your crown chakra lift skyward. Shoulder blades on the back broad across your shoulders. Notice if you're carrying your heart in front of your pelvis or behind, because if you do this, it's going to affect how you live on your knees. Bring the heart center right over the pelvis, palate over the heart here. Now feel into your knee joint and notice if you tend to lock your knees back and rely on this kind of back hinge to hold you up, which throws your pelvis, and bring your femur bone right up over your tibia. Feel that femur bone aligned right over the shin bone. Now from your pelvis, notice if you root down evenly into both feet, or if it's a lot easier to lean onto one leg. So much easier for me to lean onto one leg. And see if you can bring balance back over both legs. Now we don't stay here very often in a standing position. Although in Qigong, this is considered one of the healthiest positions your body can be in for the optimal move of the qi, the energy through your body. So pause here for a moment. Let the hot air balloon lift you from center palate. Take some of the pressure off your feet. Let the hot air balloon really lift you. And feel into the joint of your knees. Do you feel the knee falling inward? If you do, can you lift at this upper inner knee up towards your groins? Lift the energy through your pelvic floor Lift up along the spine, through the heart center, through the palate, through the crown chakra. Now you've lifted the center channel of your body. Actually, the core work we do of that lifting pelvic floor can help you lift the pressure off your inner knee. And now lift to one toe. We've grounded the other foot's four corners. Let your arms float out to the side to help support you and lift off that toe. Feel into the four corners. You're going to feel movement across the foot as it tries to find balance. And notice if one corner really wants to wobble off. That's the corner you bring your concentrated attention to. Bring your foot back down. Spread those four corners again. Lift those three arches and lift to the other toe. Now we want to draw in the banks of our river to help the hip line up over the femur bone, which lines up over the tibia as we lift the toe. Feel into your foot as it balances and notice how that impacts your knee. Feel in hugging into the banks of the river and notice how that impacts your knee. Both should help to stabilize your knee and release. And now begin your gentle marching. But can you keep your heart aligned up over your pelvis and your palate aligned up over your heart? And keep that hot air balloon lifting you so that you're not as heavy on your feet, so that your knees can move more fluidly, as well as your hips, as well as your arms swinging from their shoulders. And if you have room in your space, march forward and then march back. Make sure you're not going to trip on any props. And march forward. The heart stays lifted and the palate's resting back, but we're not so far back on our heels. We're using the whole of the foot, pointing the foot as we lift off and lift the knees. Aha. Good. Marching forward and back. Heart stays lifted. Eyes rest back in our sockets. Feel what it would feel like just to rest your head back over your shoulders. So we're playing with our postural habits. I worked with someone yesterday who has the habits of leaning forward as they walk, and they've noticed that now they're scuffing their toes and they're tripping more frequently. And so we worked on just letting the heart center rest back over the pelvis and the palate rest back over the heart, and the gaze to be lifted not down towards the floor. We're not dropping the head forward, even though we may look forward on our trail that we're walking along to make sure there aren't any obstacles. And now come back to center, resting those focal points. Take your left toe out and inhale. Lift the arms, lift the leg. Feel into the four corners of your standing foot and how they're working. Feel into the three arches. Can they stabilize for the knee? And come back down. Step onto the other foot and inhale, lift, and exhale, lower. And notice if you have a tendency to lock the knee back, try to avoid that. Better to have the knee bent a little forward than hyperextended back. Really try to lift through the pelvic floor, lift that line, lengthen the spine up off the hip so that you're not resting too heavily over the hip. And doing this, try to lengthen up, lengthen that left side body. And release. And let's step gently to the left and come to center, and gently to the right and center. Now feel into how you bend your knee out over the foot. You might want to bend a little less. Check in that the knee feels okay as you're moving. Step the foot under the knee. Don't leave it back behind you towards your pelvic floor. And then maybe we can step out and lift and lift and lift. Find that hot air balloon lifting you from the palate, even though now your spine is arching. We're working on strengthening the knees as we bend and lift and bend and lift, and we float and float and float and float and warm up our body with this gyrokinetic movement. Let's stop and let the arms swing up and over and come down and swing up and over, and feel how the whole myofascial network works together. Still aware of the four corners of your feet and the three arches. Take the hands the other way. Inhaling and exhaling and inhaling and exhaling. Know how feel how the shifting weight moves over your feet and how your knees respond and your pelvis, and release the arms. Feet sit bone distance wide. Take them a slight bit wider. And look at your knees. Imagine there's a little headlight on your knees. Take your knees straight forward so the headlights are pointing straight forward. And lift back up. And take the knees straight forward and lift back up. Imagine there's a hot air balloon lifting you from the center palate. Your heart's still over your pelvis as you bend and lift. Knee lights straight out forward. You can watch your knees for a moment. We're learning to track the knees and stay bent in your Utkatasana and lift the heels and lower and lift and lower. Remember your hot air balloon. Lift and lower and lift and lower. We're strengthening quads and feet. One more. Lift and lower and straighten up and reach. And reach the left arm away from the left foot and the right arm away from the left foot. Can you really ground the four corners of the foot you're reaching away from? Lifting the arches. Now ground both feet. Reach both hands. Lengthen. And exhale. Release your arms and roll one shoulder and then the next. So we come into the shoulders now. Feel into the movement of the shoulder blade on the back ribs. Don't be eager to get into the elbow. Really feel the shoulder joint moving. Let's warm that up first. And then reach the elbow wide. Maybe it comes more narrow and up. And we stretch the fascia across the body and lift the hand and lengthen and breathe into the movement. Really point the toe you're stretching away from so that we can stretch the whole fascial network because we need space around these joints. And release down and inhale up and interlace your fingers if you can and stretch them skyward. If not, it's okay to have the hands out wide. Reach, root the tailbone and exhale, release. Pause in your mountain pose. Broad across your shoulder girdle. Bring your left hand forward like you have a string attached to your knee and lift your toe and lift the knee and tap. 2, 3, 4. Turn the knee out and tap. 2, 3, 4. Knee in and release and lift the right. Now you're also being lifted from the center channel. Tap. 2, 3, 4, and down and open and lift. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and close and lift and lower and pause in your mountain pose. Now lift your toes except for your big toe ball mound. Keep that plugged in. Stretch across your transverse arch of metatarsal knuckles and plant your pinky toe ball mound. Feel into the arch, big toe to pinky toe. Now plant your right foot strong and lift to the toe of your left. Open your arms into your cactus position and feel your shoulder blades on your back. And lift the left knee and circle. 2 and 3. And circle wide and in. 2 and 3. And step down. Now stay aware of your left foot arches as you lift your right toe and hug in the banks of your river. Let the hot air balloon lift you off and make sure your femur bone is over your tibia. You're not locking your knee. And circle. 2, 3, 4, and other way. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and release. And open the arms. Palms forward, spread your fingers, and flex your Make your fists and open. Bend your knees out, over, let the headlights point straight and open. You may have to look down at your knees for a few rounds to make sure your headlights are pointing straight ahead. Open the hands and make your fist and open and fist and open and fist. Now turn your palms out and gently draw circles with your hands like you're washing windows on each side of your body. Circle the other way. And then draw the hands forward, cat curl the spine, draw the arms out and stretch the heart open. So we cat curl, we let the head come forward, stretch the ribs away from the spine, and then we open and stretch the sternum open. The knees are bent, the headlights straight ahead. We open the heart in the front and then open the heart in the back. When we talk about working on the shoulders, we need to work on the muscles that restrict the rib cage and restrict the fluid movement of the shoulder joint. Likewise, we need to build strength in the shoulders. We come forward and we open. And then in the open, we draw our circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And lower down and roll your shoulders. The shoulders are connected to the neck. Root the four corners of your feet. Find your focal points, pelvis, heart, and palate. And let your left ear lean gently to the left. Lift the right hand, take the right thumb slightly back, and let your gaze look towards the floor. Right here, we still want to be aware of the arches of our feet and the femur lined up over the tibia. And we release back to neutral and lift the head. Lengthen all the way up to that center palate so the neck has space before you lean to the right, and take the left arm open, thumb back, and let your gaze turn towards the floor. We're trying to open tension in the neck. Fluid breath in. Check in again with your knees. And notice if you tend to grip the floor with your feet. Open your foot. Plant the four corners. Relax the foot. Keep the foot grounded as you lift back up. And turn to look out over your left shoulder. And then turn to look out over your right shoulder. And reach for your TheraBand. Bring your TheraBand right across your front thighs with your palms facing back. And for a moment, draw your wrist back and throw your shoulder forward. Okay, this is a natural tendency that we might have. It's a teeter-totter tendency. I want you to resist the teeter-totter tendency. I like the alliteration of that, teeter-totter tendency. And then draw your wrist back, and at the same time, draw the head of your arm bones back. We're developing shoulder awareness. Okay, feel your shoulders broad on your back body. Rooting into the four corners of your feet. Line your femur bone up over your tibia. And breathe deep into the front chest and the side ribs. Breathe deep simultaneously into the low back and root your tail. Like there's energy moving from your low back up into the chest, from your chest into the low back. Let your palate line up over your heart. We're not jutting the chin forward. Femur bone over tibia. Inhale, look out over your right shoulder and pause. Take a few breaths. Strong across the front chest, strong in the shoulder blades on the back. And then exhale through center, look out over the other shoulder, and inhale and exhale and feel the strength. Four corners rooting, toes are not gripping. You're balanced over the four corners, femur balanced over tibia, focal points balanced over one another, heart opening, shoulder energy working. And release and roll the shoulders. And bring your right hand to your hip and let your left hand open in your diagonal. Feel the strength across your shoulders. Connect the lifted right shoulder to the left buttock, to the left four corners of your foot. Oops, I did my side, so that probably confused you. So anyway, feel into your direction from the lifted arm to the opposite grounding buttock and foot. And lift the knee on the same side as the high arm. Root into the four corners of your feet and lift your knee and tap. 2, 3, 4, and 5. As you stand on the next leg and lift, hug in the banks of your river. Feel still in to the shoulder lifted. Now it has to ground to the leg right beneath it, but it can stay strong in its awareness of the cross hip. Lift and tap. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and release. And roll your shoulders. Now this can feel really different side to side for those of us that have scoliosis or even injuries in the shoulders or hips. Take your right hand forward, or take your next hand forward. I think I did it wrong last time. Ground your legs. You look like you're all on my same side though, so I'm going to have you open the right arm, except, well, not all of you. Okay, open. Spread your shoulders broad and root from your legs into the feet. Feel the four corners. Feel your inner arch. Notice what happens if you collapse the arch in. The knees follow, so do the inner groins, so does the pelvic floor. Now lift the inner arch of the foot, lift the inner knee, lift through the pelvic floor, and root the tail. Now roll to the outsides of your feet. Feel how that's going to take your femur bones wide in the hips, bow your knees out, and put odd pressure on your ankles. Come back to the even arches, inner arch and outer arch, medial arch and lateral arch of the feet. And lift to your toe of the lifted arm. And lift the knee. Tap. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Step down. Lift to the opposite toe. Find your stability, cross body, and lift. Tap. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and release. And roll the shoulders. And pause in your mountain pose. Everybody, lift your left heel off the ground, plug in your metatarsal arch, and draw the heel back like a bird talon. Take it way back behind you, unfurl it. Lift to the ball mounds of the right foot and draw the heel back behind you like a bird talon. And now stand on your really long feet. Lift up through the palate and crown chakra. Let your shoulder blades rest on the back body. Align your femur bones up over your tibia. Breathe space into the joints of the feet. So if you're gripping in any way, try to let that go. Space into the joint of the knee and into the hips and along the spine. Relax your arms, dangling out of the shoulder girdle. Eyes back in their sockets. Palate over heart over pelvis. Three-dimensional breath. And then come to your wall. Standing on the four corners of your feet, bring the whole of the humerus bone against the wall. Again, feel into the knees and lean over your left leg and come to the toe of the right. Feel into the three arches of the foot working. Stabilize your knee, draw the hip banks of the river in and lift the knee. Now try to open the knee out to the side and come back to center. Stay focused on your standing foot's three arches as you take the knee out and in. Stay focused on releasing the head of the arm bones back into the wall and line up, palate over heart, over pelvis, and come back in and step down and lean a little over your next foot. Float the knee up, broad across your shoulder girdle, open the knee and hug back to midline. Plant the four corners of your standing foot. Stabilize with all of them. Keep the arches lifted. Draw up the center line through the pelvic floor, up the spine, and release. Stand strong on both feet. Femur bone over tibia at the knee. Hug in the banks of your river and breathe length up your spine. Breathe three-dimensionally into the torso. And release from the wall. Okay, let's come to the floor. So I'm hoping that that work helped you see how interrelated it all is. Let's come to the floor. And I'd like you to have 2 blocks today if you have them, and a ball and your long TheraBand. And lay back onto the floor. Arms wide, palms up. Come into your constructive rest. Head on a pillow if you need one. Tailbone towards earth and tailbone towards sky. Rock your pelvis. Hopefully your shoulders can rest really broad here now after the work at the wall. Nod tailbone. Now as your pelvis moves, feel into the reaction of your knees and the pressure change on your feet. And then come to neutral and come into somatic walking. Think of tracking the knee right out over the second and third metatarsals as you lift the hip. So we're not swaying the knees side to side. They're actually walking out over the feet. This should lengthen the musculature along the lumbar spine, not just twist it. Reach the knee forward over the toes. Feel into the pressure change on the feet. The pull of knee onto hip. And get used to feeling into the interrelationships. This is fun. This is kind of like the pre-workshop exercises. Hopefully that'll help it settle into your bodies more, those of you who are coming. Now relax the pelvis broad, and those of you who aren't, you get a little taste of it. Rest your pelvis broad, rest your shoulder girdle broad, and bring your palms up to face each other across your torso. Broad across your collarbones, ground the head of your arm bones and float one leg up. Land the foot light as a feather, but feel into all 3 arches and float the other foot up. Land the foot. Feel into the inner, outer, and arch from big toe to pinky toe. Feel for them as your feet land. Land the foot lightly so that you're not putting all your weight back down on the foot. Try to put just like 60% of the weight on the foot. Feel into the arches. Honor the arches of the feet. Plant lightly the 4 corners of the foot. Feel into this idea of lifting the inner arch, the outer arch, even the transverse arch from big toe to pinky toe. We just become aware. That awareness translates into healthier alignment and more fluid, easeful movement. And now let's float one leg up and the other to join it. Still broad across the shoulders, head of the arm bones resting back. We train the shoulders to open as we toe dip one leg and come back up. Can you keep some consciousness in your shoulders even as the legs move? The knee stays at a right angle and the foot completely relaxes. Now feel from your pelvis up to your heart. Where are you working to sustain the stability for this movement? And bring the legs together. Still broad across the shoulder girdle. Open the right leg out to the right. And draw it back in. Keep your hip, knee, and ankle aligned. So you're opening the page of the book and coming back in. We get used to being aware of the line. Fluid breath. We're opening the line to the side, but the hip, knee, and ankle hold a line. and come back to center. And open the right leg overhead and the left leg long and flex and point, and pulse, pulse, and switch. Pulse, pulse, and switch. Point your feet. Pulse, 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 pulse. We strengthen and lengthen the fascia of the feet, which also you can probably feel as you point your feet pulling on the shin, which also connects into the knee. Now flex the foot and press out with the heel and feel how the back of the calf and the knee may stretch as you pulse, 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 pulse. Maybe you feel it all the way up the hamstrings towards the sit bone. Just make sure there's not too big of a pull at the sit bone. And come back to center and bend your knees. And draw your right knee in and lengthen your left leg out. Nod your nose towards your mouth. Lengthen the whole spine. Almost lift the head off or lift from the hairline. And switch and switch. Begin with pointed feet. Straightening the legs. Make sure you don't straighten into hyperextension so that you're not throwing the knee back every time you lengthen the leg. Still, even here, as we float in space, we think of aligning the femur and the tibia. And then hug the knees back in. Reach hands and feet for the sky. Zip up your midline at your legs. But even here, it doesn't mean hyperextending the knees. Take your heels long away from the wrists. Stay strong at your inner core. Circle the arms and hug the knees in. Inhale, wrists away from ankles. Exhale, hug in. Maintain that center arch at your spine strong and hug in. Inhale out, keep your lumbar curve, and exhale in. One more time, strong through the arch of the spine, and hug back in. Take the right leg overhead, left leg long. Again, open your shoulders and rest your arms, palms up, and pulse, pulse, and switch. Point your toes. Really stretch through the front of the foot. Feel if that stretch connects into the knee and the quads. Now floint the foot. Press up through the big toe ball mount, through the second toe ball mount, through the third toe ball mount, through the fourth toe ball mount, through the pinky toe ball mount. Stretch through the fascia of the feet and feel, does it move up the leg towards the knee? Is it tighter on one side than the other? And now flex your feet. Press the heels skyward. Pulse, 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 pulse. Feel into the stretch of the fascia. Where do you need balance in your legs? And bring the legs together and bend the knees and float one palm on top of the other behind the head. And exhale, lift the right elbow, lengthen the right leg. Relax the foot, but lengthen the leg. Don't lock the knee. And switch, and switch. Can you lengthen through the bones without locking the knee? And likewise, those of you who don't find length, can you work towards finding length? Straightening the knee. Maybe that means you reach your foot more skyward, but we work on length through the leg and through the spine. Lifting the elbow, we lift the shoulder blade, we lift the rib cage. Rest the head heavy into the hands. Support the upper body as you work from low rib towards opposite hip pointer. Feel how the center core of the body draws it all together. And relax and rest the head and arms. And float one foot lightly to the floor. Land all four corners. And then the other. Align your heels with your sit bones. And come back into your somatic walking, reaching the knees right out over the second and third toe or metatarsal. Relax on your exhales. Let the shoulders broaden on the floor. Fluid breath. Now, bring the right ankle over the left knee. Flex the right foot. Keep the right foot flexed because as you take external rotation, of the hip, you want to protect the knee from overstretching the lateral ligaments, which are the outside ligaments of the knee. Exhale if you'd like and draw the legs in towards your body. Keep the foot flexed. Rest your shoulders back and just draw the legs in with the strength of the legs. Breathe the belly towards the legs. And if you feel some pressure between belly and leg, that's good. That'll help move the contents of our intestines. If you don't have that much flexibility, you can bring your hands in and gently press on the belly and breathe into your hands. Getting the same benefit of that pressure into the intestines to help move the contents. Now, aware of both feet, lower your foot closest to the floor back to the floor. Feel for the four corners and three arches. And then lift the other foot and set it down. And switch sides. Flexing your lifted leg foot. Draw it across the shoulder girdle before you exhale the legs in. Keep the arms relaxed and use the strength of your legs to draw the legs in. Keep the foot flexed to support the knee. Deep three-dimensional breath to irrigate your tissue. Long neck. Relaxed jaw. Think of your focal points right now, pelvis to heart to palate. Rest the head of your arm bones back. We're working on postural alignment, even here. The lifted leg that's closest to you is flexed in the foot. And then we release slowly, landing the four corners of the closest foot on the floor before we take the other foot off to protect the knee. Release your head from your blanket and inhale, lift your pelvis. Feel the four corners of each foot in your bridge. Think of lining your knees up over the second and third metatarsals. So no, you can't see them now, but we're becoming more conscious in our bodies. So just try for that alignment. Lower your pelvis and lift. Stay broad across the shoulder girdle, strong in the arms back to the floor as you inhale and float the pelvis up and exhale and float it down. Notice if you tend to roll out on your feet or roll into your arches and what impact that might have on the knees. Think of the knee headlights. Can they stay straight ahead? And as you lift the pelvis, can the knees lift out over towards the second and third metatarsals? Now lift into your bridge and hug the sit bones towards one another, activating your glutes in the banks of your river. Can you hug the glutes in without maneuvering the knees? Exhale, relax the glutes. Feel how the pelvis may sag a little and put a little weight on the knee over the ankle. Hug the sit bones in. Maybe the pelvis can lift a little. Maybe you stretch out of the knees a little, but we stay aware of reaching them out over second and third metatarsals. Release the buttocks and hug back in. Feel the outer heel, the inner heel, the pinky toe ball mound, the big toe ball mound. Lift your toes, lift your arches, and draw the sit bones together and release in pulses. Pulse, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and hold. You may feel your IT band, a connection on the outer thigh down through the knee, down through the shin, into the heel and pinky toe ball mound. Relax your toes, keep your arches, relax your buttocks, and release. Relax onto the floor, three-dimensional breath. And as you relax, you may feel you need to lift your shoulders and draw them up towards your head and lift your head and draw it out of your shoulders because you find more space. Come into your somatic walking. Stay really conscious in the lower body today. Feel how that movement of the knee and the hip, stability of the foot, allows for a stretch along the spine. You may feel it all the way up into the neck. Feel for it, the interconnectedness. And continue to let your spine elongate if it's ready. Fluid, three-dimensional breath. Now step your feet as wide as your mat. Take your arms into a T or overhead. And exhale, release your knees to the left. Stretch through the right psoas pathway. We keep the right foot gently flexed to keep the knee in healthy alignment. We reach the right knee down the mat to stretch the inner thigh, the psoas pathway up to the spine. So we're stretching from right inner arch, through the right knee, through the right groins, along the right spine. And exhale back to center and take the knees the other way. The shoulder girdle and the stretching arms can help us find this length in the lower body as we reach the left knee long. Even here, we can think of not dropping the knee completely out of alignment with the second and third metatarsal. That will keep the knee healthier. Fluid breath into the stretch of the thigh, the stretch along the spine. You may even be able to stretch open the armpit. And exhale back to center and release your arms to your sides. Bring your long TheraBand in. Bring it up over the ball of your big toe and pinky toe. And let the heel come towards the floor and back up. The reason we bring the TheraBand over the big toe ball mound and pinky toe ball mound is so that we'll press evenly into both sides of the transverse arch, waking up both sides of the leg. If you bring the strap into the stirrup of your foot, into the inner arch, a lot of people will just activate the side they're used to using. So if you're a supinator, you'll push out with your pinky. If you're a pronator, you may push out with your big toe. We want evenness across the transverse arch. Now come back up with the foot and lengthen the other leg on the floor and imagine your footprint is on a wall. And take the left foot around, down, and up, or whichever foot is lifted. I guess I didn't tell you. So yeah, just circle your lifted leg. And remember, you always start moving towards the big toe side because crossing the body is easier to maintain than coming out to the pinky toe side. Shoulders stay broad. Keep an even pressure through the big toe and pinky toe ball mounts. Come back to center and now go out towards the pinky toe side. This means you're going to have to ground into the opposite shoulder. Feel that connection, that myofascial chain from the leg reaching out to the side to the opposite shoulder. Ground the opposite ribs and the opposite pelvis. Step the four corners of the foot on the leg on the floor. Step the four corners of that foot onto your imaginary wall. Lift the three arches. Come back to center and pendulum the leg. Ankle aligned with knee, moving from the hip. And come back up and we'll switch feet. Big toe ball mound and pinky toe ball mound press into the strap. We step the other foot's four corners onto the floor. Fluid breath and movement. Can you maintain your lumbar curve? If not, feel free to have a folded blanket under your pelvis. Now here, as you press up into the strap, you could again hyperextend your knee. Try not to do that. If your knee is bent, begin working to try to find length into your big toe ball mound and pinky toe ball mound. And lift the foot up and lengthen the other leg on the floor. Footprint onto the imaginary wall. Take the lifted leg across the body towards the big toe side first, stretching the outer hip. Fluid breath. Feel into aligning the leg bones. to pressing evenly into the big toe and pinky toe ball mounds. Now there will be a shift across the foot as you take the foot across the body, but you don't want to lose the other ball mount. Come back to neutral and go out the pinky side first. Feel into how that leg, as it moves out, the opposite side of the body needs to ground. Let there be a stretching action across the torso there. But stay aware of how your knee joint aligns, the strength of your ankle, the pressure into big toe and pinky toe ball mounts. Come back to center and lift the other foot back in and pendulum. Feel into the 3 arches of the foot on the floor, into working from your big toe and pinky toe ball mount in the strap. Stretch that arch from big toe to pinky toe. And then lifting the leg, release the TheraBand and roll yourselves over onto hands and knees. Remember, you can come hands to the seat of the chair, feet on the floor. And inhale, lengthen your spine into a cow. Now here, imagine if you just drop the belly, drop the spine, what pressure that's going to put on the hips, how that pulls the hamstring open even more, how that may sink the neck, and instead lift back up and lengthen the whole spine. Then we don't hang out on the hip joint, which puts different pressure on the knee joint. As you point your toes back behind you, or if you're on your feet, find your metatarsals aligned with your knees. Exhale, come into your hissing cat. Now take your pelvis back. Take your pelvis back and stretch the lumbar spine and breathe into it. Fluid breath. And if you feel your knee joint is tight here, a great place to work is to put a blanket roll behind your knee. We'll do a little of that work in our workshop today because we want even space across the knee, not too much tightness on the medial side or too much tightness on the lateral side. Come back up onto your hands and knees and roll your toes under. Lift up onto the balls of your feet. Press into the footprint of your hand now. Think of your palm as the arches of your feet. Make sure there's an arch in your wrist. And walk your dog. Feel how your feet move, whether the toe joints want to bend or not. And now look at your knees and draw them out in line from your second and third metatarsals. So we're not walking out with our feet in turnout or our feet turned in. And we watch our knees move out over those tarsals. And then come back up and flow forward into your plank. Feel into the strength of your shoulder girdle. Feel the levelness of your shoulder girdle. Compare that to leveling your pelvis and see, can you maintain your level pelvis as you lift one foot off the floor? Can you be aware of the 4 corners of your lifted foot and the transverse arch of your standing foot? And step down and lift the other side. Long neck out of the shoulder girdle. Step down and roll back, downward dog. Fluid breath. Now, everybody turn your heels out and drop your knees in. And notice what happens to your ankle creases. Take your heels back behind your second and third toe. Lift up onto the balls of your feet. You should have no ankle creases. Now slowly take your heel back away from the tarsals and see if you can keep the ankle creases even across the ankle. If you tend to flatten your foot, you'll see the ankle creases become uneven, or if you roll out. Fluid breath. long spine. Step your feet in towards your hands. Bend your knees like they have headlights on them straight ahead. And lift up into your Utkatasana, fierce pose. Fluid breath. Now, as you straighten up, I want you to think the hot air balloon has you from the palate, and you're going to root your feet, not use your leg muscles. You're being lifted and you're pressing down. And pause in your mountain pose. Palate over heart over pelvis. Fluid breath. Okay, now take your two blocks and put one in front of the other and leave a space for the arch of your foot. So it depends on how big your foot is. The heel stands on one block and the metatarsal arch on the other. Rest your weight evenly between the big toe and pinky toe ball mounds and the inner and outer heel. Now everybody throw your knees back. Feel how it changes how your pelvis sits. Now draw your knees forward. If you can have the balance, look down and take your knees forward like the headlights are pointing forward. Pause in the bend and take a breath. Now, as you press down into the feet, lengthen up like there's a magnet on the top of your head pulling you up. Straighten your knees. Feel your pelvis, heart, and palate aligned. Feel into even balance on the four corners of your feet. Find your shoulder blades on the back body and breathe deep into the torso, bringing the breath up into the heart. Let your palate rest back over your heart, over your pelvis. Feel into the four corners of your feet. Feel into the arches. From big toe to inner heel, connect with it. And then the less well-known arch from pinky toe to outer heel. And feel into big toe ball mound to pinky toe ball mound. And step down. Step down and come to the left edge of your mat. Into your Pilates V and feel for the arches of your feet. Your feet, after all this awareness, may feel more open. They may feel bigger. Bring your thumbs to your shoulders and find your shoulder blades on the back. Stretch the heart open. And lean to the left and land and draw back. Plug in the outer heel of the back foot and feel for the three arches of the back foot. Feel if you're more conscious in your foot's connection to earth. The back leg knee stays straight. It doesn't hyperextend. And we lean and we catch ourselves and we float back because we have a nice line between pelvis and heart and palate. We aren't hinging at the hip, we're hinging at the ankle. And we draw back. And then we hinge forward and the arms reach and we pause. Feel into the strength of the line. Check in that you're balancing the arches of your feet and the knee and draw back. So the tendency might be to fall into the arch if you pronate or to try to roll towards the outside of the foot. Try to find a balanced foot that helps balance the knee up into the pelvis and through the body. And draw yourself back. And pause in your Pilates stance. Shoulders broad, arms relaxed way down through the fingers. Breathe length through the midline of the legs, up through the midline of the body. And step to the other side. Feel the four corners of each foot. Balance the three arches. Now we are hinging off to the side. So how do you keep those arches balanced? That's part of your practice. Bring the thumbs to the shoulders and angle over and back. How do I angle the ankle to keep those arches in support of the knee? Feel for it. Feel for the alignment from hinging ankle to stable knee to stable pelvis, supporting the length from pelvis to heart to palate, and then stretch the arms and come back and reach and back. Feel how the grounding four corners of the foot can help you create fluid movement that hinges from the ankle. Stable knee. Fluid breath. And come back and release the arms broad across the shoulder girdle. Breathe the heart center lifting. Rest the palate back. The shoulder blades, loving hands on the back body. Take them broad. Hug in the banks of the river and root into your outer heels. Your pinky toe ball mound. Your inner heel, your big toe ball mound, and float up onto your transverse arch. And lower your heels and float up and release and float up and release and float up. Now your knees bend out over your second and third metatarsals and the heels land and you zip up and we lift, bend and lower and lift, bend, lift, bend and lower, lift, bend and lower. Now lift. Bend your knees, lower your heels, zip it up, lift, bend knees, lower heels, zip up, lift, bend, lower, and straighten. Balance yourself up over the four corners of your feet. Release your tailbone and lift the base of your skull. Shoulder blades, loving hands on the back. Breathe into the whole circumference of the torso. And if you feel you need to spread your feet out a little more, now that you've worked them so well, spread them. And let's inhale and draw into our growing awareness of all the interconnectedness in our bodies. Let's inhale into the energy we've moved today throughout our physical form. And let's inhale into how it makes us feel good to learn our bodies and work them. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.